I'd rather live with Mom than you.
It was just after midnight on a Friday night. My husband was playing an online game in the living room while I was doing some work I had brought home at the dining table when he casually suggested we should live separately. I was surprised and asked him why. We hadn't been getting along well lately, but I still had the right to hear his side of the story. My name is Megan. It was midnight, the moment I turned 35, when my husband, who knew I was going through infertility treatments, dropped a bomb. It was such a surprise that I went blank. Without taking his eyes off his game, he said, "You just turned 35, didn't you? Even if you got pregnant now, it would be a high-risk pregnancy, so I'm giving up on having kids with you. That's why I want to live separately and live with my mom." What? I don't understand. I couldn't understand how giving up on having kids had something to do with living separately with me and going to live with my mother-in-law. We got married 2 years ago. I wanted to enjoy our new married life for a while, but my husband was eager to have a child. Being the youngest of 3 brothers, each of whom had 3 kids, my husband was constantly told by his older brothers, "It's best to have kids while you're still young and energetic." So we decided to give it a try and began trying for a baby, but a year passed and we were not blessed with a child. One day my husband said, "You should get checked out." For what? "Why, we can't have a kid. There must be something wrong with you," he yelled. Although his presumption made me upset, I decided to get checked out at the gynecologist's office just in case. The results showed that I indeed had a problem that made it difficult for me to get pregnant. I had no symptoms and the results were a huge shock. The gynecologist said, "It's difficult to conceive, but natural pregnancy is still possible." However, I felt heavy-hearted to tell my husband about it. That evening, while we were having dinner, I calmly told my husband about the results. He seemed triumphant as he said, "I knew it was you." "But they said I could still get pregnant," I muttered. He glared at me and said, "It has been impossible and it will stay the same." He made his own conclusion again and I was filled with anger. "You could have a problem too, you know." That provoked him to raise his voice. "Megan, it's clear what's going on here. How dare you shift the blame onto me?" With a loud bang, my husband slammed his fist on the table in anger. I shrugged my shoulders with surprise. "You're nothing but a failure. Can't even bear a child." With that parting shot, he headed for the bedroom. Left alone, I started crying, cleaning the dishes through my tears. My husband was just shocked and lashing out. If we could just have a child, we could be a happy couple again. I told myself this and decided to double my efforts in trying to conceive and win my husband's heart back. I started attending the gynecologist regularly. As my knowledge about fertility grew, so did my anxiety. Even though I tried especially hard on my most fertile days, it was always a swing and a miss, and I found myself becoming stubborn about it. One morning, I said to my husband, "Let's try again tonight, okay?" To my surprise, he looked at me disapprovingly and said, "Isn't it a little embarrassing talking about tonight first thing in the morning?" I flushed with embarrassment. Thinking about it, I would find it strange too, but we're a couple, it should be natural. Hiding my complex emotions, I tried to gently persuade him. "You want a child too, don't you?" But my husband retorted, "I don't really want a child. It costs a lot of money. My brothers told me that a real man has a wife and kids, so I thought I'd try. But it's not happening because of you. I have a respectable excuse now, so I don't care anymore." From that point on, whenever I approached my husband, he would reject me with excuses like, "I'm busy," or "I'm tired." I was just as busy and tired from work. Being rejected time and again shattered my pride as a woman. Lately, my husband has been addicted to online gaming, staying up late into the night. Before I knew it, not just our intimate life, but our daily conversations had become almost non-existent. My husband seemed to have lost interest not just in having a child, but in me too. But I didn't stop going to the gynecologist. What surprised me during infertility treatments was the sheer number of couples attending. The clinic I went to specialized in infertility treatments. It was always crowded, and it was normal to wait 2 to 3 hours even with an appointment. Seeing so many other couples struggling with the same issue helped me a lot. Occasionally, I would see a couple leave the consultation room, the woman touching her still flat belly tenderly, her husband walking close by her side. Perhaps they had just found out they were pregnant. I wish it was me. I want a child too. I want to win back my husband's love and be happy. I had held a faint hope for my child, but now I was told it would be difficult to pursue any further treatment without my husband getting tested, and I found myself at a standstill. It might be impossible after all. The way home from the gynecology clinic always filled me with a painful longing, making me want to cry. Getting out to the main road, I looked up and was taken aback by the sight of an old lady in garish attire. The surprise made my tears stop. She was probably in her 70s. Her thick makeup and brightly colored dress were jarringly loud. I didn't know anyone like this, but strangely, she looked familiar. Could it be my mother-in-law? Even though we lived in the same city, I rarely saw her, and she looked nothing like the image I remembered, but I was certain. There was a distinctive mole on her cheek. But my mother-in-law was supposed to be a simple, ordinarily dressed old lady. Taken aback by her drastic makeover, I blended into the crowd. In truth, my mother-in-law is quite the character. She's lenient on herself, yet overly strict with others, casually hurling insults that would leave most people speechless. Moreover, she dotes on my husband, her youngest child, displaying blatant favoritism and treating the rest of her children as if they're good for nothing but money. My brother-in-law also despises her for this. When my father-in-law passed away from cancer last year, there was talk of her moving in with one of her children, but both the eldest and the second son and their families adamantly refused. I thought it would fall to us, but she declared she would live alone as long as she was healthy. Whether out of resentment for being turned down or just her inherent character, when my father-in-law passed away, she caused a huge scene, shouting, "Ungrateful brats, stealing money from the elderly," and monopolized his inheritance without dividing it. No matter how many times my husband or brother-in-law suggested dividing the inheritance according to the law, she would not relent and no one could defeat her. Even I've been told by her, "I have no intention of getting along with you, so don't come to my house." But compared to the fiery battles between her and my brother-in-law and their wives, I was in a relatively peaceful position. My mother-in-law disappeared into a shop without noticing me. I couldn't believe she was the same woman I knew, and I found myself staring at the signboard of the building she entered. That night, I didn't know whether or not I should tell my husband about his mother, but decided not to. After all, she's an adult, and with my father-in-law gone, she's single. It's not my place to criticize her personal hobbies. I've seen her a few times since then, but I've always pretended not to. Then, months passed, and as the calendar turned to my birthday, my husband proposed that we live separately. I decided to ask my husband, "Did you find someone you like?" Perhaps my mother-in-law is an excuse, and he might be planning to remarry someone. But he spends his days playing video games at home, so I don't think he's seeing anyone, I ponder in my mind. I find myself oddly calm and almost want to laugh. My husband, on his part, responds seriously. "Well, there's a girl in my gaming group who I kinda like, but it's just the internet after all. Could be a guy pretending to be a woman," which makes it all more ridiculous. He is sane enough to judge, so why did he suddenly suggest a separation? I just don't get it. My husband continues, "I just want to live with my mom more than with you," he repeats. Why would he want to live with his mother and not with me? Do you hate me? Has our love disappeared? I search for an answer that would satisfy me and ask my husband the next question. As soon as the words leave my mouth, my heart throbs in pain. He doesn't need me, the woman who can't bear a child due to infertility. Holding back the tears, I wait for my husband's reply. "No, not really." Huh? My husband defies my anticipation in a straightforward manner. "Didn't I tell you before? I don't care about having children anymore. We need another way to make money." Money? I parrot his unexpected words. He nods calmly and says with a serious face, "It's my mom's inheritance." I can't see the connection in the story at all, and I'm confused.
My brothers are greedy. They'll try to take more of Mom's inheritance than me, using the excuse that they have more children. I won't let that happen.
Who's the greedy one here? I was dumbfounded, but I kept my mouth shut. But your mom is very healthy. Isn't it too early to talk about your inheritance?
That's why. My mom hates you, but she adores me. If I start living with her from now, I think it will be advantageous in receiving the inheritance. My mom must have a lot of my dad's inheritance that she took all for herself, so I don't have to work hard and can live a comfortable life. We don't have children. We need money because there's no one to take care of us after getting old.
My husband explained as if making a mockery, but I understood the meaning and was taken aback. The reason my husband wanted a child was... So you needed a child to take care of you after getting old? And since that's not possible, you want a larger share of your mom's inheritance? With hopes my assumptions would prove wrong, I confronted my husband. However, his response was again completely opposite to what I had wished for.
Of course,
he exclaimed.
Kids are there to take care of their parents. If I live with Mom now, I might be able to take all of the inheritance.
I couldn't help but feel the strong blood connection between Tom and his mother, as if it explained everything. He showed no intention to share anything equally. While I was left speechless, Tom continued his monologue.
When Mom's gone, I'll come back to live with you. You can't bear children, but you can manage the house chores just fine. You serve a purpose as a housekeeper, and you bring home a decent paycheck as a full-time worker.
Alright, let's get a divorce. My true feelings burst out, cutting him off. Who would accept such treatment, agree to live separately, and then move back together? He's making a fool out of me. I knew that Tom, being the youngest of three, had a tendency to be spoiled, but this selfish plan of his was beyond reprehensible and unacceptable. I realized I could never find happiness staying with him any longer. That was the moment all my love for Tom completely vanished. Let's hire a lawyer to properly divide our assets and part ways.
Huh? Divorce? I didn't say anything about divorce. We can just live separately. And hiring a lawyer sounds overly dramatic.
Though Tom seemed startled at first, my explanation seemed to sway him. No, you'd feel better as a single too. I won't be satisfied unless we legally divide everything equally. If we get a third party involved to distribute the assets, there will be no further issues, right?
With a smug grin, Tom agreed. Well, you have a point. Fine. If I get a good chunk of Mom's inheritance, my life after the retirement is secure and I can even remarry someone else. Just don't regret it.
Likewise, don't count your chickens before they're hatched and make sure you don't regret it. The next day, I got a recommendation for a lawyer from a friend who had gone through a divorce and went straight to consult them. I also contacted our landlord to inform them that only Tom would be moving out. I arranged for the movers too. While I was making calls, I could hear Tom on the phone with his mom telling her how he wanted to live together and be a dutiful son. I was secretly shocked he had proposed separation to me without first getting his mother's approval. According to Tom, his mother was overjoyed at the prospect of living with him. She seemed to have some requests or something to ask of him. Just like that, preparations for the divorce proceeded astonishingly quickly. Initially, the plan was to split the assets 50-50, but the lawyer I hired was incredibly competent. He methodically cornered Tom into agreeing to also add alimony, allowing me to take 70% of the assets. If we're separating due to Tom's selfish reasons, I have no qualms about taking it without hesitation. 3 days after our divorce was finalized and my husband returned to his parents' home, I was relaxing in my apartment when my phone rang. It was my ex-husband, Tom. The moment I picked up, he pleaded,
"Help me, marry me again."
He sobbed.
"There was no inheritance at all. My mom has been blowing all her money on male strippers. She's penniless now. What's worse, she's drowning in senior citizen loans and has mortgaged her house."
"Oh, really? That's tough. Your mother is addicted to those strip clubs, isn't she?" I chuckled. I'd seen my former mother-in-law disappearing into those strip clubs. The prices on their billboards were shockingly high. I've seen her go in several times, but there's no doubt she spent a fortune there. Ever since Tom got hooked on online games and stopped showing up at his parents' house, his mother got sucked into this club scene. She spent all of her late husband's inheritance and her retirement savings, and now she's taken out so many loans she can't make ends meet.
Why didn't you tell me if you knew?
I told him I don't intend to meddle in people's hobbies. I never stopped you from playing video games, did I? Tom was at a loss for words and changed the topic.
She asked me to take out loans in my name, but that's impossible. Give me the money from the divorce settlement. If we were married, it'll be our money.
No.
Why not? You love me, don't you? Your husband is in trouble.
I did love you when we were married, but when you suggested we separate, all my feelings for you disappeared. It's obvious you're only after my money now. Why would I get back together with you?
That's not fair. Mom's demanding my entire paycheck. She says it's only natural for a child to support their parents. She was always kind to me.
Tom whimpered pitifully, but his belief that he should always be in the center of attention and that everyone else should cater to him was the same as his mother's. They really are 2 peas in a pod. They brought this on themselves, and I don't owe them any help. We're divorced now, Tom. We're strangers. Please handle your family's problems on your own, I said, smiling brightly. I ended the call and blocked his number. Then I called each of my former brother-in-laws. It had only been 3 days since the divorce, and I'd planned to let them know when things calmed down, but it seemed better to tell them sooner rather than later. I relayed everything Tom had told me about his mother and the circumstances surrounding our divorce. My former brother-in-laws sympathized with me and promised to give Tom a piece of their mind. Later, I heard from one of them that Tom's brothers had stormed his parents' house, causing a huge commotion. I heard it briefly from my former brother-in-law. After Tom's call, I changed the locks on my door just in case, but I decided to move after all. It's better to completely cut ties. While I was looking at various real estate listings, I found out that his parents' house was for sale. I could ask my former brother-in-laws what happened to Tom and his mother, but I decided not to concern myself with it. I'll look forward and sever ties with the past. I'm thinking of moving to a pet-friendly apartment and enjoying a leisurely, free life, perhaps with a cute cat.